welcome to another episode of Botox and Burpees, the Bison 15. I have with me very special guest, longtime coach at CrossFit Bison, Adam Ramsden. He was number coach 3 or 4, really early in the sequence in terms of being hired, and as instrumental as anyone has been over the past 10 plus years, growing Bison, making it what it is. He is called the professor for a reason because he is quite the cerebral, intellectual, and a person who has possibly some of the most knowledge about CrossFit and CrossFit coaching around. So, with that, we're going to try to keep it to 15, but we'll let it run if it needs to, whatever works. So, Adam, I know we just talked about it. You want to talk a little bit about how your coaching and your instruction has evolved over time. So start with that and tell me what that is really.
Yeah, I think when I first joined Bison and going through the open a couple times, we took it very seriously right from the beginning. That was kind of like a mantra that we were very serious about the open. It was, important, and we've talked, over episodes about all the reasons why it is important. So I think when I started coaching, I thought of myself as the standards guy. Like, let's keep everybody to full range of motion. If you're not squatting down, are we really, counting those reps? And I think over the years of coaching, I've softened on that, definitely.
Really? Because
Yeah,
when
I
I
just,
was when you were my judge during the open, you held me to
well,
those burpee standards
yes.
pretty tight, which I
Yeah, I feel
appreciate very
like
much.
Yeah, I think if we need to kind of make a separation of those athletes that are trying to be competitive, and the athletes that are just coming in and they want to be part of the open. You never want to put them in a situation where you're kind of like giving them a really strict standard when they're just there to be part of the gym and be part of the community. So the standards are definitely needed. We see videos every year of the open, every year of quarterfinals, semifinals about, athletes not hitting standards. And if you're going to be competitive, yes, you need to be held to a higher standard. So back when we did the Bison Brawl, I was constantly walking around making sure that we were hitting standards because that was our in-house comp, or our, the comp that we were putting out there. So holding to the standard was important. But in a normal Thursday night class, if somebody says, I noticed so and so wasn't really hitting full depth in their wall balls, I'll kind of just say, like, I've softened on that. Let them come in, get a workout in. And if they have aspirations to be competitive in the future, then they know that they're going to be held to those standards.
So what made you change over all this time? Because aren't we sort of shorting our athletes if we're not sort of getting them to what we think the standard is?
Absolutely. And I think, I'm always going to remind somebody to try to get a little bit more depth in their squat, or, to make sure their chest is touching the ground on a push up or a burpee. But, if I'm going to beat a dead horse and stop somebody from working out and say, we can't count these reps because you never know what's going on in somebody's life. They just want to get in there. They want to have the best hour of their day, and that's our job, is to provide that for them. Um, so yeah, I think I'll always go over the standards. I'll always demo the standards, and we'll coach through that during the workout. But I think I've gotten over the fact where I'm going to stop somebody and say, listen, you've got to make sure your chest is touching the ground every single burpee. You missed 3 there, so go do another 3 reps.
Um, I get you, and I understand what you're saying, and agree. But on the other hand, it hurts. It physically hurts my heart if we have like a push-up workout, and I see someone literally like just like bowing down, like just like swaying or doing those snaky push-ups. Like, um, what do you say to someone who's like clearly just not even like in the ball? Do you say anything?
Yeah, absolutely. You have to say something. And, it's something where, again, it's going to be individual athlete dependent, right? If you have somebody that it's their 3rd week and they're still getting to learn the movements and the standards. And some of the movements have a lot of different standards. I was coaching a wall walk last Thursday night, and it's just to think about starting the rep in the same position. Are your hands allowed to move before both feet are on the wall? And CrossFit hasn't been great about setting exact standards. 1 year we'll take the judges course and it'll say both feet have to be on the wall before your hands can move. Sometime last year it was both feet have to be off the ground before your hands can move. So, we're in a sticky situation where we've got these standards that we want to hold, and we'll demo them and, explain them at the beginning of the workout. And so somebody needs to be reminded. But if it's an athlete that's been in the gym for 5 years, yeah, you could be a little bit more, serious of the tone you take and say, listen, it's been going on for a long time now. We need to work towards the standard a little bit better.
What do you think about the uber competitive person in the gym? Because I'm thinking about them and they're just sort of like not getting the thruster depth, maybe because they're moving so fast. And these are people that might not take very kindly to someone saying, hey, listen, like you really are not meeting standard.
Yeah. And I think, there's issues that come up with that too, is that, you have to think about other people in the class. Now they're going on push press, looking at your score, and they're going to say, well, you know, is that score really valid or did something happen here? So I think if you want to quell those little talks, you've got to be responsible about hitting the standards yourself, and maybe if you're not sure about where you are on your thruster depth, ask the coach to take a look at you. I think that's something that a bunch of athletes have said to me, hey, do me a favor, just watch a couple reps and just make sure I'm hitting the standard. And that's easy to do. And it's something that, gives me as a coach the ability to kind of always check in on that athletes, especially those uber competitive athletes
Mm,
who normally move very well.
mhm.
It just gives an extra thing that I can check in on and let them know about.
Let me give you another scenario because I'm thinking about all the places where I've been like sort of stuck. Back squat day and guys doing, 185 hitting depth, 195 hitting depth, hits 225, and suddenly it gets really hard and he's just not getting quite there, but he's so pleased with himself after finishing that set. Like, oh my gosh, I made it. Like, do you talk to that person? Do you just let it go? Like, what are your thoughts on that?
I think I've had conversations going way back. We had an athlete years ago that, for reasons, of injury history and everything like that, just could not hit depth on a back squat. So on his scores, I had a conversation with him and I said, I'm going to put range of motion next to your score on the whiteboard, just so you know that, we're not hitting that full depth squat, but you're going to your capabilities, and I think that was a good middle ground where we kind of had that conversation of now you can say that it's not that you were cheating the workout or you were shorting the reps. It's just you're working to your ability and your capacity at this point. And are you going to work on that squat depth? That's an individual choice that you have to make.
Uh, so you also train kids now and younger athletes. So what's your philosophy about standards when you're working with younger athletes at this point?
Yeah, I think it's super important to go over the standards and make sure they're hitting the standards. We're very slow in our programming of introducing new movements, introducing squats and deadlifts and stuff like that. In the second year, this summer, I want to introduce a lot more of that. But I also don't want to allow, poor movement, knowing that these kids are going to grow up if they get those bad habits. I'd rather pull everything back, and allow them to push the weight years from now with good form, rather than allowing things to go now. So I think it's more important the younger you are to kind of hone in on that good technique, hit those standards, make sure you're doing everything in a safe manner because those habits build throughout the years.
What is the age range of the kids that you'll be working with this summer?
So I have a 5 to 8 year old class which sometimes we have a couple of 4-year-olds that sneak in there, but they're great. And that age group is focused more on, body weight movements,
Mhm,
a lot of games, and
mhm.
just getting them comfortable moving in different directions. And then we have a 9 to 12 program, which is a little bit more intense, a few more movements that we work in, deadlifts, goblet squats, med ball cleans, just giving them the foundational movements as best as we can.
I was thinking about that upper age range, especially, and then even a little bit higher, maybe even into the 14, 15-year-olds, like, especially the boys. It's just so hard to stop them from going heavier, to really focus on form. Like, they just want to put a big number up sometimes, especially on barbell stuff. So, like, how do you rein people in at any age, but whether it's a 15-year-old or a 10-year-old who's just kind of like, I got 50 burpees and, like, maybe not great looking burp.
Yeah. I think we are in a lucky situation at Bison where um, all the parents that I know of the kids that are in the program and the ones that are going to graduate and eventually hopefully become members, they're very good about, setting expectations and limitations. But all I need to do is if I see there's one of the kids that's trying to do too much, I'm going to bring them in a morning class. I'm going to have them look at Manny or Yaya and say, like, look at how well they move, and the weight and the reps come later. Anthony Gerald moves amazing. Jamie Kajajian moves amazing. We have great examples of fantastic athletes that have done it the right way, and you can see their improvement from when they started to, now they're putting up those weights and getting RX scores, and the Goosefas are continually beating me in every workout. But they did it the right way. So we have good examples of that throughout the gym, which is nice.
Yeah, me too. They're beating me too, but I do remember, especially Yaya, who's on the younger side, like, even like a couple of months ago or a year ago, like, he could have gone heavier, but he actually self-selected himself with a weight that worked better for him. And you're right, their movement quality has always been outstanding, and I think they're very careful to figure out what weight they are. And I'm not sure, is that just because they're focused on their own athletic endeavors, like, be it wrestling or whatever, or, it's just that family's mindset. I'm not sure.
I don't know.
Um,
But I
how?
think oh, sorry.
Go
No, I
ahead.
think it's good that a lot of our younger athletes are training for a sport outside CrossFit, you know, because then they get that discipline from there. So I think that's also a positive
I
overall.
agree. I think most young, and I think this has been discussed in other forums. Like, kids should not be training to be professional CrossFit athletes in general. I think Ben Bergeron has always said that, and I agree very much so. Like, it's fun to do CrossFit, and they should use it as a training base, and there's a lot you can learn and take away from it. But they should be playing a multitude of sports, um, which and CrossFit can be such a great base, like, in terms of just like fitnessing. But, like, yeah, I feel like if you're only focusing on CrossFit as a young athlete and not anything else, you're shorting yourself in a big way.
Yeah, I think CrossFit is great for improving fitness and work capacity, but I think sport is unmatched in developing athleticism. Just the way you have to react when you're outside of the bounds of a CrossFit workout is completely different than knowing exactly the rep range you're doing. You're only moving in one direction usually. I think that reaction time and everything like that, and adapting to the pace of the game is huge for athleticism.
So, what about athletes? Like, what can they do to do better in terms of their standards? Like, for example, I was just thinking about the Saturday's workout. I did it. It was a partner workout. Ash was coaching. I was doing step ups. I scaled the box jumps to step ups, and it was a synchro box, uh, either jump or step up. And so I was stepping up, but I realized only sort of at the end of the workout that every time I stepped up, I kind of looked over to see if my partner was, like, done at the top, and that I mean, that's my excuse. I basically wasn't standing all the way up at the top. And um and I said that, and well, I realized that, and then I said to Ash afterwards, I was like, you know what? If I wasn't standing up at the top, uh I'm sorry. I was looking over, and that's my excuse, at my partner, and that's why I wasn't. And I feel terrible because I always try to keep to standards. Maybe, not the prettiest standards, but to standard. And Ash said, like, yes, I think a lot of people were doing that. Like, I'm gonna let the next class know, like, maybe the people could be facing each other on the boxes, so you don't have to like look to the side. You can just look like across to each other and not have to like turn or bend. But I don't know if she was going to say anything, and maybe just because she knows that I generally keep the standard, or maybe, you know, um, maybe I'm such an egotist that I'd be like, she thought I would take offense and be like, "How dare you? I stand," so, or not cause a negative sort of interaction. So, as an athlete, like, what can we do um, to do better on those type of things?
Yeah, I think the warm up's super important. And I think, as I've said before, like, no ego, film your workouts, because it's tough at the end of a 20-minute AMRAP to feel how your body's moving. Are you hitting those positions and everything like that? Oftentimes, I'll look back at my workouts and I'll see no reps that I, am just embarrassed by, just because I'm out of the mindset, I'm tired, I'm sucking wind, and your form breaks down at some point, and we want people to push that line, just to see what they're capable of. And that's usually when the biggest celebrations come, is where you get improvement on a workout, that maybe you're redoing, or a movement that did an extra 10 pounds. We want to celebrate those things, but you also want to make sure you're hitting standards. So I think the warm up is important. Make sure when the coach says you've got a couple minutes here, if you want to get a couple full reps in, call them over, say, how do these reps look? They'll give you any cues that you would need. And I think just getting that muscle memory of hitting that same standard every time from the warm up translates into the workout eventually.
Yeah. What you mentioned before about athletes coming up to you and saying, "Can you let me know how my form is?" Or I've been struggling with like this movement, and can you just double check and make sure, like, give me some feedback on it? I think athletes should always do that if there's something that they feel like they should um work on. And I love when athletes do that, and I'm glad that people are doing that for you. Um, the other thing I've done as a coach also is kind of be like the a-hole coach. Like, I'll warn people in the warm up, like, everyone, and people know this. Like, I was a push up like Nazi for a while. Like, everyone in 5 a.m. was terrible at push ups. They just couldn't keep the standard. So don't be offended if I'm going to come around and ask you to, like, straighten up a little bit and stop bending so much or whatever. Like, I kind of pre-warn people, just so that, like, if they um, don't hit and I give them feedback, they don't feel like they're singled out or anything like that. Um, but I realize also what you said very much, it resonates with me. There are people that I have talked to like 5, 6, 7, 20 times, and they will never, like like you said, for a multitude of reasons, they will not like find hitting standard a priority for themselves.
Yep. Yeah. I
Um,
mean, I've gotten eye rolls. I've gotten yelled at, of like,
who's
what are you
yelled at you?
talking about?
Don't tell me. Don't tell me who's yelled.
And, it's just, we've got to do our job, which is, the standard is the standard, so I'll remind you, I'm never going to stop you from working out unless it's unsafe. If you have too much weight on a deadlift or a power clean and it's not looking well, I'm going to stop you.
Yes,
But on a push-up workout, I'm not going to stop you, but I need you to know that this is what I'm seeing. And I'll tell people, go back and check your video. Like, you'll see that your chest is not touching the ground. Your elbows are not locking out. Maybe once out of every 10 reps. And you can eye roll and you can yell at me. It's fine. I've got thick skin. But I feel like I would be letting you down as an athlete, not, trying to keep you to the standard, especially if you are somebody that likes to be competitive. You like to try to get the best score on the whiteboard you can. We got to, make sure we're hitting those standards.
I agree. And I myself have failed, like, failed many times to meet standards. I just failed on Saturday. So there you
Yeah,
go.
everybody does it,
Yeah.
and you know, it's something that is humbling, but it's also just something you keep in the back of your mind that maybe there are certain movements that maybe you say, okay, I got to bring the weight back a little bit, even though I know I can do it because I starfish on my power cleans once I get to a certain weight, And so if you want to continually make progress as an athlete, you've got to realize that you have to lock in that form because the technique is what's going to make you get those gains. You'll get stronger, but you've got to be able to, do those reps in the most efficient way possible in order to get that PR that you're searching for 3 months from now.
Adam, such good advice. I need to take more of your classes. I miss them. Like
Yeah.
I don't come in the evenings enough. So, but I will take everything you said to heart. I hope there's a lot there that I think a lot of people could use, and I think not take offense. Like I feel like if Ash had yelled at me, I would have been taken aback, but then I would have appreciated it and I would have told her thank you. So, and I think the fact that you're giving people a little bit of grace as well as you're getting um, along in terms of your coaching, I think that that's what all great coaches do. Like they are understanding the situation a little bit more before they're saying no rep like to somebody. You're right. It
Which I still love doing.
yes, I know.
Love
Trust
not
me,
repping.
I do know that myself. So thank you, Adam. Hope to have you on again soon. Really appreciate it. And thank you so much.
All right, thanks.